Seems fair to me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you with us, and happy birthday to 9PBS, which went on the air September 20th, 1954, 68 years ago this week. How about that? Let's meet the panelists who are joining us on this esteemed television station, starting with Wendy Wiese, co-host of the Jennifer and Wendy Show on the Big 550 KTRS. Mr. Bill McClellan, columnist with STLtoday.com and the Post-Dispatch. Ray Hartmann, columnist and talk show host. He's with RawStory.com, the Riverfront Times, and the host of St. Louis in the Know, weeknights on KTRS. Mr. Alvin Reid, sports columnist and editor at the St. Louis American. And Alvin and Ray will be with us on Next Up, halfway through this hour, talking about redlining and historic discrimination in the housing business here in the St. Louis area. So that'll be very interesting. Looking forward to that. Alvin, here we are about 6.5 or 7 weeks away from the election for U.S. Senator. We have two candidates, Eric Schmitt, the Republican, and Trudy Busch Valentine, the Democrat. And as of right now, they have not agreed to debate. What's going on here?
Well, the Missouri Press Association last weekend at their annual convention, 4 places, 3 candidates showed up. Eric Schmitt did not. You can see a picture of it in this week's St. Louis American, and that's shameful. Okay, you've got journalists from throughout the state of Missouri, from rural districts, urban districts. Everybody's there, and he doesn't show up. So, all right, you want to debate. You want to make fun of her, there was your chance, okay? And he backed out. Now, I don't know if he was scared. I don't know if he was lost. I mean, it's hard to find your way to the Lodge of the Four Seasons sometimes, I think. But at the same time, there's no excuse for it. So I don't want to hear it. I just don't want to hear any more of his platitudes or any of his nonsense.
Okay.
You have
let me make you hear it one time.
All right.
and I'm for Trudy Busch Valentine, but I think it's incumbent upon the underdog to debate under any circumstances. And, Eric Schmitt would not agree to a debate on this station or with the Missouri Press Association or on another TV station. He said he would only do it on KTVI. And I think that Trudy Busch Valentine should have said, I'll debate him wherever, and should have leaped at that because, she, according to all the polls, she is behind, and she can't be there saying, well, he should debate on my terms, or I put this on Trudy Busch Valentine.
But it's a policy. It's the politics of personal attacks. You have to figure out a way to fashion a personal attack. She's an elitist heiress. He's inflexible, that kind of thing. But what really bothers me is I remember a time, and it wasn't that long ago, when you had Senate debates, senatorial debates, gubernatorial debates on every single television station locally.
True.
And that was a service to the voters.
Yes.
And that now they are so caught up in the name calling and the campaigning that the voters are an afterthought.
Well,
and that's what people need to remember.
Absolutely. And Eric Schmitt's a coward because he does not wish to debate. And Trudy Busch Valentine's folks pointed out, he only will and I don't know where you're getting this doctrine that the underdog has more of an obligation. I think to Wendy's point,
Well, Ray, it's common sense. If you're losing,
I don't care. I think that I think both candidates, winning or losing, in general, have an obligation to the voters to debate. Full stop, regardless of whether they're losing.
Sure, I do, but all I'm saying is the person who's winning is always going to say, well, I don't want to debate because all that can happen is bad things.
Right,
And Trudy Busch Valentine needs to get out there
to be really
and be
aggressive.
seen on the stage with him and to put her points forward.
I think Bill is absolutely correct. But
Agreed.
point of order, she did agree to a debate here at 9 PBS.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm trying to make a point here, factual. We're trying to introduce a
Don't
fact
bring
to this
facts
conversation.
into this.
9 PBS did not hear from Mr. Schmitt. Okay.
Well, and the thing about it is, it's back to this whole MAGA thing he's doing, and that is the Fox affiliate is the only place he feels comfortable, and he does not. Just like as Attorney General, he doesn't believe he represents everybody.
Ray. It's not really a Fox affiliate.
Well, what do you mean it is?
It runs one Sunday program, like, you know.
But the point is, it's the Fox
But
station.
this would have been Jasmine Huda doing the interview.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's still, he obviously doesn't want to go where
it's Fox
there's a new
program.
Wait, but Charlie,
neutral position.
there is, whatever that reason is, why just KTVI? So there's got to be, what Ray's saying, there's got to be something.
And for her, why not KTVI?
I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that Trudy Bush Valentine, if she wants to win, has to be willing to say, I'll debate him anywhere.
She has to be the aggressor, and
Yes.
Bill is right that if I'm in Schmitt's camp, all we can do is lose ground. So I get
Now,
that part.
Schmitt just doesn't
Bill McClellan, a colleague of yours, Josh Renaud, who is a data journalist with the Post-Dispatch and who was called a hacker by the governor. Terrible moment in Missouri history when Josh was just doing his job and then he was accused of breaking into computers. Well, to make a long story short, he's an award-winning reporter as of this week.
Yeah, it was great to see because he's a nice young man and a computer specialist, and he found that on the website of the Department of Education, teachers' personal information was accessible. And Josh called the Department of Education, alerted them to the problem so they could fix it before he wrote a story, and Governor Parson, unbelievably, sicked the highway patrol on him and said this is criminal hacking, and the Society for Professional Journalists, or SD, whatever it is, has just given Josh a national award for ethics, and it's well-deserved, and shame on the governor.
Okay, now let's talk about another journalist, this time Vic Faust, an anchor for KTVI, who also, I guess, moonlighted with a radio program. That's not that unusual, but he went on a berserk tirade, a scathing tirade against his co-host during a commercial break. And he was fired as the result of this. Joe Holloman, your colleague, broke the story. And when they released a tape of the conversation, it sounded like Morse code to me because it had so many beeps in it, right? But I guess there's an opening at KTVI as we speak because Channel 2 fired the guy.
Right. Well, you know, it was a very interesting story, but I felt uneasy about it. And I don't know Vic Faust, and he seems like a bully, and he was attacking a woman, about, among other things, about being a bad mother. And that's just a terrible thing to do, especially to a working mom. I have no sympathy for Faust, but I felt uneasy about a conversation that was off air and not public being made public. And I know that once you go on TV, you don't have much of a privacy argument. I mean, if you're out there and your living is watch me, you don't have much privacy, but I still felt kind of awkward about it, and I read it with zest. I mean, good for you, Joe, I thought, but I felt kind of dirty reading it.
I didn't. I tell you what, it was a great job by Joe Holloman. But in addition to that, this is 2022. You're on camera everywhere. Everyone, not just people on TV. When you're walking down the street, you're on a camera. When you're anywhere you are, somebody can be recording on a cell phone what you say. And this guy, I normally am not that quick to say somebody should be fired. I just don't generally like that. This wasn't a gray area. This guy, and part of it does sound kind of sexist, that as a guy I looked at it and say, what a horrible coward you are, and how disgusting to talk to a woman like that. I know it's a dated sort of reference, but it wasn't just, I mean, if he was just mad and said a few things, it'd be one thing if he, you know, you could say, well, it's anger management, maybe he needs to deal with. But to be as vile as he was, it's just, you can't then go on, and of all things, as a TV news anchor, you know, there's no church of the second chance, in my opinion, for it.
Well, I think, you know, Charlie and Wendy, you guys have done so much radio, and a little bit I've done, you know, and Ray, you know, like, it's like, hey, TV, it's kind of like, you know, that, hey, I'm on TV, right. And, you know, when we break, we are very well aware of the fact that they can still see us in the control room, so don't do anything like nutty or whatever. Okay. Radio, I'm even more sensitive to when we go to break. Now, I'm not saying that maybe, you know, at some point, not cussing somebody out, but I may have said a cuss word or, you know, like whatever. But I don't think he really got fired, I mean, just summarily at both places for just saying something. If he'd have looked at her and just said, like, you know, you're whatever. Yeah, okay. He would have got suspended. He said, like, right. You know, this got out and all that. And then I would have, but that tirade, it just made him sound dangerous. And if I'm an employer, I can't have you here if everybody who works here is flat out afraid of you. And I think that's really why he lost his job, because it was frightening. And like, it was beyond.
I can't argue with that. I mean, it was frightening.
Something that was really, really fascinating, I noticed on a couple of websites of people who had, you know, commented on other people's Facebook pages, and I saw some former radio people saying, actually there were music radio people saying, you know, it's really not uncommon for things to get out of hand. And I thought, yes, it actually is. It is very, very uncommon for things to get out of hand like that. And to be completely honest, this was almost like the most merciful thing that could have happened to him, because if he lost his mind over somebody teasing him about his lack of computer skills, then this man has no business in talk radio or music radio where they're expected to be talk show hosts. But he was menacing. The word was menacing, and it clearly was. It was clearly a setup.
Well, I don't know. It was a setup. Somebody wanted him gone,
no,
right?
but he had a history of this. You don't just willy-nilly, when you're in it. First of all, you're in a room full of microphones, so that tells you right there that something bad could happen if you decide to go off on somebody like that. But I think that they had had a problem with him before. Somebody took advantage of the situation, but that was menacing.
But what if we were able to record the conversations during the commercial breaks of St. Louis in the Know? What would we hear? What would we hear?
They would probably be talking about whether they were going to do McDonald's.
They would be bad. They would be bad, but not menacing.
My prediction is he'll come back. He'll plead.
Not in this market. Not in this market.
Well, maybe not in this market.
I disagree.
He will do well on right-wing radio or TV. I mean, look at the language Trump used in calling that woman horse face and all that. I mean, all of that stuff.
That reminded me of one thing. I'll say it quick. Boy, you call somebody, this gets out, you call somebody a bad mother, I guarantee you, well, if it's kids involved, there's a father out there somewhere, and I'd have a word with Mr.
No. All right. Ray Hartmann, what do you think about a plan endorsed by Greater St. Louis, Inc., which is the big business and civic group, to close bars and nightclubs in downtown St. Louis at 1:30 in the morning as opposed to 3 o'clock, which is the current closing time? As you know, people have been complaining about all the riffraff and the problem, the commotion, even the gunfire and the homicides in downtown St. Louis on weekends. The residents on Washington Avenue and elsewhere have had it up to here. So they want to close the bars at 1:30 instead of 3, rolling up the sidewalks here in St. Louis.
I don't think it has any material difference between 1:30 and 3. I mean, if anything, and I'm not somebody that thinks we can police our way out of things, and I do think it would be nice if the corporate structure was more interested in dealing with the causes rather than the symptoms of this problem. But I will say that at 3 a.m., to the extent policing ought to work, there's not a lot else going on. You should be able to police the area more intensely and really focus on those clubs than at any other time of the day. And so the idea that they should uniquely pose a problem, and I know I'm not going to drag Bill into this, but Bill's made the point, I think well, on the question of homelessness, that if you move into a downtown area that has bars in it, you can't really argue that the bars shouldn't exist. And if you think the difference between 1:30 and 3 is that different, I just don't agree.
I think it's a huge difference, and I think any municipality has a right to say you got to close when you got to close. And if downtown, that only part of the town, says like we're shutting it down at 1:30, that's perfectly acceptable to me. I just don't understand why that would be a big deal. We're closing at 1:30. You could go to Soulard, you could go to the east side, you can go to the north side, you can go wherever you want to, but you're not staying down here. And it isn't like they're going to throw cuffs on everybody if they're there at 2:01 in the morning, lingering or whatever, even though they probably should. But, you know, I just think that's fair, it's out of control, and you reap what you sow.
I applaud them because they're doing something, they're addressing a problem. And so, as you said, there are other areas, other entertainment districts. If people need to continue to drink at that hour, you have alternatives.
Yeah,
I thought, I thought Ray was going to, when he said about Bill, I thought he was going to say, well, Bill be hanging out till 3 o'clock in the morning last year.
Now we have to go back a lot of years.
Very long
That's
way.
a very old, maybe,
an
but in a
old
really
reference.
early years of Donnybrook, I think you'd have to go back to.
All right. Wendy Wiese, I want to ask you about Governor Pritzker of Illinois. He's very upset with busloads, maybe plane loads of migrants who've been sent to Chicago, about 500 of them, from places like Texas and Arizona and Florida. The governors there are trying to make some sort of point that the immigration on their border has gone out of control. 2 million people have been apprehended in the last year alone on the border. One city, Yuma, is population 100,000, now has 150,000 migrants in it. It's hard to believe. Do you have any sympathy for J.B. Pritzker, whose Chicago, by the way, is a sanctuary city?
No, I don't. And the fact that he's asking for emergency assistance and that, you know, this is completely unexpected. Well, now you know how some of these border areas feel about what's happening in their towns. I've always sort of believed that this is like one of those political chestnuts that they're pulling out of their pocket just in terms for the, you know, just in time for the midterms to get people riled up. I just don't think there's political will. I think this is a lot of political theater, and they are exploiting vulnerable people.
Well, but I have total sympathy with anybody on the receiving end of this, because, you know, it's not that this is beyond, this is almost like a simulated civil war we got between the red states and the blue states, and there is no motive other than to make a political point by using these poor migrants who have suffered so much as treating them like cattle to be shipped. And there's a lot of evidence that in all these cases, they're getting them on buses or planes with the promise, the false promise that jobs await them. That is the literal definition of trafficking. It's a crime.
Or kidnapping.
Right, and so, no, to me,
you know, the funny thing is, Ray,
that's a crime.
I think there's equal guilt on both sides.
No, there isn't equal guilt.
Is.
What's the guilt by Pritzker? What's he guilty of?
I think that St. Louis ought to ask for some of these people.
Sure.
I mean, I remember during Hurricane Katrina, we thought we were going to get refugees, and we didn't. They all went to Texas. And now we're trying to get Afghan refugees, and good for us. But the refugees from Mexico and Central America would be more easily assimilated here than the Afghans. I think we ought to step forward and say, we want some of these refugees.
But they wouldn't send them.
We would
You're right.
We would like permission to get these people to work because we've got jobs here now.
I agree.
Bill,
I agree.
You're right. but they wouldn't. For that reason, they wouldn't send them
but there's
because
one
they're
thing,
not
Ray.
interested in
Ray.
the people. They're interested in the political.
Ray, as you know,
They wouldn't send
Time
them.
Magazine, the
Great
Washington
point.
Post, and the Boston Globe have all interviewed some of these individuals, and they're not all upset that they've been sent to places like Martha's Vineyard and New York City. In fact, some of them consider it a blessing that they got away from the squalor at the border to these nicer areas.
I with Ray on that, like, okay, that's fine. I don't want to be kidnapped and sent any place, and then maybe they turn me loose and I'm in Northern California.
But they're not
okay, right? But I, like, you know, Charles, this is mean and this is cruel, and you just can't.
But according to those websites, not entirely. Some
That's
people
right.
are
They're,
looking
because
at
the
it as a
migrants
blessing
themselves
in
are saying they're
disguise.
happy because
Yeah.
in some cases they're actually closer to family members, and they were wondering, okay, I get across the border. How do I get from Texas
That's
to
a
New
good
York?
boy. That's
Okay,
really.
so it doesn't bother you.
That's a slippery
It's
slope.
what they
there.
said.
Yeah, but
It just
what you're
doesn't
talking-
bother you that
that's just wrong.
Well, Biden is sending them around the country as well.
Excuse me. He's sending them around the country.
Yes, he
He's
is.
sending them to red states to make a political point. Is
No,
that
no,
right?
he-
It doesn't bother you
they're
at all.
also-
Let me get this straight. DeSantis and Abbott are taking people and literally treating them as props and sending them to blue states to make a political point, and that doesn't bother you.
And it doesn't bother you, apparently, that cities on the border are overrun with migrants.
I didn't
In all the years
say
I've
that
known
at
you,
all.
I've never heard you complain about that.
Actually, I think comprehensive immigration reform is something we really need
No
to
kidding.
do.
You
And
gotta
I
write
don't.
about
we
that.
I
say
think,
that
interestingly,
constantly.
neither party has done a good job. In fact,
Thank you.
Well, no, but
That's
not.
what we're
That's
saying.
no. That doesn't mean that it's okay to say, well, you're a blue state, and because you haven't done a good job either, that we can just
off to
dump
Alvin.
people on you.
Alvin's favorite topic is sports gambling. And the governor, Mike Parson, has said it's not going to come up in the special session. So St. Louis, or rather Missouri, won't become the 8th state to allow sports gambling in the nation.
Well, you know, first of all, Governor Parson, you can send me to Copenhagen for a couple weeks. You know, I'll find my way back. You know what? As crazy as it sounds, he's right. That shouldn't be handled in the special session. Come on, legislature, get yourself together. Okay, Alvin is sitting in his wallet. You know, a wager he made in Illinois that University of Kansas would win 3 football games, and they already have. I'm a winner. Okay, but Illinois got my money, so it's stupid. Well, we got to get it done, but the special session is not the place to do it. It really isn't.
This shouldn't be a special session at all. I think the one piece of on agriculture, there was some urgency. It's the only item that has any, and I don't. We haven't obviously covered it enough, paid attention, but the whole sales tax. I mean, the whole income tax cut has no urgency. It has no reason that you got to remember. Special sessions cost taxpayers a lot of money, and the concept of them is to do things that can't wait. In this case, less than 4 months till the regular session starts. And
but can't you make the argument, Alvin, that in the special session devoted to something, at least it would get done or voted up or down? And because when we leave it to the legislature and its normal run of things, everybody.
never come up.
Well, but no, that's my fear. You won't have time to rationalize who's going to get what, so it'll get voted down. And then you'd be starting over from even farther back than you already are. It will pass this spring when the legislature's in, because they had the votes to do it. They just never did vote on it.
And if I understand correctly, Mr. Expert,
All right.
this is from either a retail location, right, or a mobile, so you can on your cell phone,
Yes.
or if you're in an actual store, like gas station.
Well, I think it would. I think then the casinos will get involved. That you could probably do it there.
It's at the casino. So, and this is something that is going on. You can bet on something on that's going on in terms of the casino or a major league stadium.
Yeah,
is
well,
that right?
the stadium, the teams want it. Blues, Cardinals.
Okay.
They'll turn it over to
okay.
Steve Tilley, just
Yeah,
like the gambling machines in the gas station.
Anybody
I wanna ask
else
you, Wendy,
nervous about
okay,
that?
final topic with
okay.
2 minutes to go, maybe less than that. Ulrich is a Chesterfield-based company. They make medical implants, spinal implants. We could use some of those
On this table, around the table.
No, I mean elsewhere. Okay, so, but they're moving to Texas because they say in Texas there are better communities to live in, it's a business-friendly atmosphere, and there's an abundance of well-educated, talented individuals.
that hurts my feelings. Seriously, as a resident of Chesterfield, as a resident of this region, I don't buy it. I think there's something else going on. They're saying that the sky is sunnier in Texas. The people are prettier and more qualified.
The ice is colder.
Exactly. The ice is colder and the water is cleaner. I don't buy it, and I feel like we've been cronkied again.
Well,
Sorry, I
except
do.
that I agree, but I will also add that there is no reason when a company, there's probably every time a company makes a move like this, there's probably 100 reasons involved, factors that we don't know, and there's absolutely no reason to take what they say at face value. End of report. It just there's
Maybe they want to be closer to the migrants.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's so terrible in Texas that the governor's got to send people out, I don't get it.
Well, let me put it this way. There was a time when St. Louis was much bigger than Dallas. Now Dallas is much bigger than St. Louis, and I don't want to be an ostrich and put my head in the sand and pretend that there isn't something going on here, folks. Obviously, Dallas has got what it takes. Something's happening down there.
No, there's a lot of factors. Again, the Sun Belt.
No
there's
state
a lot
tax.
of. Well,
That's true.
Keep in mind something
Football.
that Dallas, Texas has higher taxation per capita for state and local taxes than Missouri.
I know.
does.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No,
Yes.
and personal
It's
To be
29.
continued.
It's 29.
Okay. Hey, lots going on, but first, let's go to the old mailbag. Regarding the Rams money, the issue could be which bank is going to get the funds to hold. That's where the battle is being waged. Thank you, Jane Raimondo. We also heard from Sean Tracy, who wrote, I know this is a petty item, but please fix the globe on your set to its proper angle, 23.5 degrees. No idea what he's talking about. You can write us care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. We love those emails, Donnybrook@9pbs.org, and of course, those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL, the 9 line, 314-512-9094, and listen to us on your favorite podcast source. That could be Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. Don't go away, because in a moment, Alvin and Ray will talk to Will Jordan, Executive Director of Metropolitan St. Louis Equal Housing and Opportunity Council, and Katie Berry, President of the St. Louis Realtors. They'll discuss the history of redlining and their apology in the St. Louis area. That's going to be fascinating, and it's next. Thank you very much for joining us.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.